full transparency, this is not the episode I intended to close out July with, but it's the episode I need to close out July with. I want to talk about the importance of not letting the fear that someone is going to lift, duplicate, copy, steal, however you want to language that, your content, your offers, or anything else in your business stop you from showing up for the people who you're helping. And that's what we're going to dig into today. Welcome to the More Profitable Podcast with Stacey Harris. I'm Stacey, and this is the spot to learn more about the strategies, tactics, and tools you need to build your more profitable podcast. My team and I work every day with podcasters like you to shift shows from frustrating time sucks to productive members of your sales team, because your show should be built to generate and convert leads. So let's get into it. Not only is today's episode not what I planned to release, it's a little bit uncomfortable for me. I've had to take a few swings at it because some of this is coming up right now, because this is a little bit of situation we've been in this month where we've had someone pretty obviously duplicating some of the things we do here at Uncommonly More. Obviously not at the level at which we deliver. Like you only know what we deliver if you actually work with us. But some language, some themes. I don't want to dig too much into that because that's not the intent of this show. What I want to talk about today, and it's interesting because I don't know if you've ever seen Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. It's a show that Aaron Sorkin wrote after West Wing. It was only on for a season, but I've watched it a mazillion times because I love Aaron Sorkin and I love Aaron Sorkin shows. So there is this bit where a show goes horribly awry. And one of the things they say, one of the lines that always sticks with me is, "This is not the show we intended at the start of the week, to bring you at the start of the week," or something like that. And this was not the episode I intended to bring you at the start of July. However, July had other lessons in mind. And those lessons, those occurrences really led me to being really sure this is the conversation we need to have, because we've run into an instance where we're seeing someone else lifting some of the work we've created, and we've had a couple of clients having to send out cease and desist letters in what feels like bulk fashion. And I have been seeing a real uptick in conversations with clients, either like on podcast strategy intensives or in the course of working together in a production container. I've gotten some emails from people who are just on the list or just part of the community speaking to this, talking about, hey, if I do this, if I have an audio sales page where I completely lay out my offer top to bottom, what if somebody lifts it? What if somebody tries to go and deliver it themselves? If I have this content built to educate my clients before they start working with me and really intentionally move them into working with me, am I giving away too much? What if my competitor comes and lifts that and starts doing the exact same thing? And then they're going to be getting those clients. And it's really easy for this fear of duplication to stop us from producing anything, from saying anything. It's really easy for this fear, this phobia that someone else might copy us, to keep us really quiet. And I want to speak today to why that needs to be what makes you loud. That needs to be what makes it so important that you deliver this kind of content, this kind of strategic content that speaks to your clients, that speaks to who you want to be working with, because they will hear it, they will connect with it, and they will pick you. And anyone doing something else is doing a shadow of what you're doing. That's what we're going to dig into today. It's probably going to be a pretty short one, but I don't know. Before we jump into it, let's start here. We have another fantastic call coming up in July, but you will miss that because it's the day this episode releases. So join us in August for the Podcasting for Profitability Roundtable. In July, we did it. We're doing it Q&A style. So we've got a form that you'll get once you sign up to submit your question, or you can ask your question live on the call. I wanted to create a space where some people could just sort of raise their hand and say, this is what I'm wrestling with right now. This is what I'm trying to decide, because I know for me in Q3, and I've talked a lot about this here on the show, it's a big experimentation time for me. We've got some experiments that you may have noticed. You may have noticed the support the show button in the description or in a podcast player, depending on the podcast player you use. That's one of the experiments we're running. The Profitable Podcaster Mastermind, one of the experiments we're running. We're playing with some things on the backside as I plan out Q4 content that we're going to be recording in Q3, but it's going to have some shifts potentially. So there's lots of things that you can test, you can play with. And I thought you might be in the same spot. You might be using this time this summer to play with some things, to experiment with things, to explore some things. And I wanted to have a space where you could ask questions if that's where you're at. If this sounds interesting, and I'm sure it does, head on over to uncommonlymore.com/roundtable to reserve your seat. Again, uncommonlymore.com/roundtable. And of course, if you don't know this yet, if you go down to your podcast player and you look in the description, there's probably a link. It's not clickable everywhere, I'll be honest. In that case, go to uncommonlymore.com/roundtable or click the episode link and it will take you to the show notes page and there's a link there. Either way, there's no reason for you not to be joining us in August. So head on over and reserve your seat. Let's dig into this. Let's talk about not letting copycats keep you quiet. Again, this is something that's a little fresh and it's a little bit something that's in mind. It's something that I'm going to be as transparent as possible with, because there are things I can't share here. There are steps we're taking that I don't want to discuss in this space. So I will start this by saying it's wildly important that if you're concerned with protecting you or your content, that you be exploring all of the ways you can do that and be really clear at how much or how little protection will be provided to you via legal roads, via copyright, whatever it may be. Make sure you've explored those things. I am not a lawyer, so nothing I say here today is going to be legal advice. We're not going to discuss the legal options. We're not going to discuss the legal ramifications. We're not going to chat about any of that because that's not my expertise. And if nothing else, I'm wildly able to stay in my lane. So I do recommend, if that's a concern of yours, if that's a road you want to take, explore it with a lawyer. If you don't know a lawyer who might be able to help you with this, reach out. I do have names that I would happily hand over to you so that you can make sure you're protected from that perspective should you want to go down that road. What I'm going to be talking a lot more about today is the idea that this fear that someone might copy you, or even an instance when you find out someone has lifted something from you, can really keep you from speaking. It can quiet you. It can really cause you to sort of shrink in and get quiet. And I want to talk about some of the things I've done this month to prevent that from happening. And I want to be as transparent as I can be around some of the things I've had to do to make sure I could record this episode. Because again, this is not my first run at this. This is the third run at recording and releasing this episode, because I had to balance how transparent I wanted to be. I wanted to make sure it was of service to you and not just a place where I was whining and complaining. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. And also, I wanted to be really clear that I could express just how universal this possibility is. Because it is. It happens to everyone. I have had several instances in 12 years as a business owner, as 10 years as a podcaster, where someone has lifted something I've done. I've had people who have basically gone and done their own versions of my podcast episodes, including leaving the title and everything, which is very interesting. I have had people purchase and take my courses only to release their own version of the course months later. I have had people lift entire offerings and leave the name the same, and the deliverables the same. I won't speak to the quality of the actual deliverable, but the features listed on the sales page, lifted from our sales page. I have had people lift email sequences. I've had people lift opt-ins. I've had people lift all sorts of things over the years. It's going to happen. And the thing I want to remind you of before we get any further is this. Anytime someone is coming in and duplicating your work, that's what they're doing. They're making a copy. And I'm going to date myself here, but if we take this back old school and we think about the quality degradation that happens when you go from copy to copy to copy, it speaks to exactly what you're going to see and really exactly what the person who does the copying is going to see in their results. When you take someone's episode and you say, oh, that was a great episode, I need to do my own version of that, but I'm going to title it the same and essentially use the same 3 bullet points, but it's my voice and I'm sharing my perspective, which is wildly similar, but obviously the words are different because I said them. I didn't use the transcript as a script, which is maybe the only thing I didn't lift. When that happens, the quality is not the same. The value is not there. Everything's a little smudgy. Everything's a little soft focus, if you will, because I'm not able to clearly see the value. I'm not able to clearly identify the expertise because it's not there. No one, I'm going to be absolutely emphatic and clear about this. No one who is an actual credible expert is lifting someone else's work and delivering it as their own. And so if you're looking at content and you're taking inspiration from others, I do this a ton. Generally speaking, with people outside of my space, I love going to listen to podcasts that are consumer focused and saying like, oh, I like this format thing. I like this, the way they did this call to action, the way they did this ad roll. I could apply that to me. It's not duplication, but I can find a way to integrate that in my style into my format. A great example is the hook that begins that goes at the top of this episode. That's not unique to one person, but the reason I added it is because I was hearing so many, again, consumer-focused shows. We're talking about shows that are essentially selling their subscriber base to advertisers, who were doing a dynamic ad at the front and then a hook and then their show intro instead of the dynamic ad and then their show intro. And I noticed the difference because I was like, oh, good, there's this like re-engagement point after the ad. I like that. I know that we want to roll out dynamic ads later this year. So where can I roll that in? So this was last year that we rolled that hook in. And it was something, again, I heard in a formatting thing on another show. I do this all with email. I love reading e-commerce emails. I love when stores email me. I have a whole email inbox just for stores to email me so that I can see what are they doing frequency-wise? What are they doing length-wise? Where are they sending me stylized emails and where are they sending me personal emails from my alleged personal shopper or whatever the look may be, right? Or the instance may be. I can take inspiration there, because none of that is going to be able to be lifted and dropped into my business because it's not the same deliverable. It's not the same business model. So when you're looking for inspiration, look outside of your competitors. Look outside of your space. And this is probably for most people who listen to the show and probably the case for you where you're going, well, yeah, that's what I do. I'm like, when I look at my competitors, I'm looking like, where can I have a different opinion than this? Where do I think they're wrong? And that's where I'm taking inspiration from my competitors, is in the places I can disagree. Not because they're wrong or I'm right, although, I mean, obviously, but because we have different approaches, because we have different values, because we have different things that we like or dislike preference-wise, styles, brands, goals, whatever. But I can go, oh, well, that's not how we approach it. We approach it this way. I want to speak publicly about how we approach it so that the people who identify with us can come here, and the people who don't can say, oh, I know this is the way I want to do it because I don't want to do it the way Stacy said, or whatever that may be. But I'm not looking to go, ooh, what have they created that I want to create too? What offers have they rolled out that I should roll out too? And by the way, if a competitor does roll out an offer that you would like to roll out, make sure you don't name it exactly the same thing. It makes it soups obvious. Moving right along, I want to be really clear, though, that most often the consequence of this duplication is not that the other person's embarrassed, is not that the other person goes and steals all of your clients, is not that the other person becomes a wild success and leaves you in the dust. Honestly, I think none of that happens. Like, either the person, anybody who would full on lift something from someone else doesn't have enough shame to feel embarrassment, as far as I'm concerned, because it's so obviously not the right choice, right? So there's not going to be a lot of value in hoping that they're going to be embarrassed or hoping that they're going to have some massive insight and takeaway from discovering they shouldn't do that. And going back to this idea that they're making a copy of a copy, think about when we used to take the radio and record it to a cassette, and then we'd duplicate that cassette for a friend. So they'd also have the Sunday night ska punk show on 103.9 The Edge. Maybe that was just me. I always kept the first cassette. I almost said CD, but it was a cassette. The first cassette. You know why? Because it was the best version. And it still wasn't as good as the radio. I want you to consider yourself the radio. And everybody that copies you are those subsequent cassettes. They're not as clear. They're not as high quality. And they're not as effective. They may get some results. They may get some jobs done. But they're not going to get the job done. The radio got the job done, right? So the likelihood that they're going to run away with all of your business and all of your clients also pretty low. The biggest danger of this for you is not losing clients. It's losing your ability to stand up and say, hey, clients, here I am. That's what's going to cost you clients, is you getting quiet. So what are some ways that we can sort of face the potential inevitability of this and make sure that if and when that happens, we can still stand up and say, no, I'm the expert. Here's what I do. Because I'll be honest, this most recent version and some version of what I'm going to describe to you has happened literally every time this has happened to me. But most recently, there was a real moment of do I need to make some sort of massive change to this piece so that I don't look like I copied? No, because mine has existed much longer and you can see that on the internet. 2, I better stop sharing so much. Because you know this. I break down every offer in an audio sales page. I break down so much of what we do and how we approach things in this show, in the podcast newsroom, in Podcasting for Profitability, in the Profitable Podcasters Mastermind, in my podcast strategy intensives, with our production clients. I'm super transparent because if you want to go and run and do this, go and run and do this. You're going to get the best results doing this with us. There's just no two ways around it. And so I had to let myself feel I need to and quiet down. I need to stop being so transparent. I need to stop sharing so much. I need to stop being so open about how we work and what we do. And I had to let myself be mad, complain. I'll be honest, immediately, the first thing I did when I discovered this most recent duplication of some of our work was I went right to Voxer, where I've got friends and biz besties and colleagues and mentors and people who I trust and who I know are going to give me quality feedback, and I can rip to complain. I just was I did, for some people it was talking, for some it was texting, but I just I let all of my frustration fly into those spaces where I knew it was safe for me to do that. Where I knew it was safe for me to share vulnerably and honestly how rip-roaring mad I was. And all the things I wanted to do. All the ways I wanted to approach this situation. None of which, let me be clear, were valuable, helpful, or going to make any sort of effective change. And then I sat with it for a couple of days. I sat with it in my journal. I talked to my family about it, who I lovingly call the board of directors of this company. I kind of went back and forth with some of the people who I had shared it with. And I just let myself sort of move through that initial super pissed off stage. Because it was necessary. I needed to feel that. I needed to process that. Had I just held on to that, the only person it would have hurt is me. The only business it would have impacted is mine. And so I processed it. I moved through it. And then, let me just say, that does not mean I'm not still annoyed by it. I think you could probably hear in the course of this episode some of the word choices I've made, pauses I've placed. I'm still a little peeved. And I'm letting myself be. But I want to talk about, more importantly, that next piece, that instinct to get quiet. I absolutely had to manage that idea that I needed to be less transparent, that I needed to share less, that I needed to be more careful about how much I revealed in this podcast, in emails, in the roundtables, wherever, anywhere. With colleagues on coffee chats, anywhere. Because when we have something like this happen, when we are fearful of someone duplicating or copying or lifting or stealing or however you want to language that, our instinct is to just share less, just to make it less available to them. Well, they can't copy me if I don't make it public. They can't steal my insights and pretend they're theirs if I don't ever share them publicly. If I just zip up and go quiet. However, again, that only hurts me. That only hurts my business. That only impacts my clients, my potential clients. That does no harm to the person lifting stuff, who is very likely still listening to this podcast. Who's very likely still listening and watching. But what I can do is do what I do better than anybody, which is show up loudly and proudly in my expertise, in my knowing that you, the right fit for working with us, can tell the difference between a real, honest, clear expert and someone who lifted stuff from a real, quality, clear, honest expert. That's what I have to do. And that gets easier every time someone steals something from me. It gets easier every time someone duplicates something. It gets easier every time I find one of these copies to move through it. Because again, I'm reminded that these copies will never deliver in the same way. And some of that is the gift of time. Some of that is the gift of experience. Because 10 years, countless copycats, and I'm the only one of us still in business. I'm the only one of us still working with clients I was working with when those people duplicated stuff. Some of the same people I was working with then. I'm the only one still around. Now, these more recent duplications, that's not true. But it's a tell of time, right? Time will let us know how they do. And I'm willing to bet in 10 years' time, I'll be able to look around and say the same damn thing. Is that I'm the only one left. Because a copy is never going to be able to deliver. And the reason what I do works, the reason why my content works, the reason why my offers work, the reason why I'm able to make sales, the reason why I'm able to grow this business, even, and we're going to talk about this next week, as sales timelines seem longer. It seems like fewer and fewer people are making an investment in themselves, in their business. Even as I'm seeing other people really have difficulty navigating the economic time that we're in. I'm making money. We're building in new clients. We are expanding contracts with our existing clients. We're seeing repeat clients return into some of our offers that are not ongoing, like a podcast strategy intensives. Because we deliver. Because we are actual experts. And me hiding that, me getting quiet as a response to these copycats, is not going to help me do what I do in the world, is not going to help me get in front of those right fit clients and say, hey, come check us out. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. So that they can say, oh yeah, that's what I want. I am so tired of struggling with this podcast. I am so tired of waiting to the last minute to get done. I am so tired of not being sure what I'm saying. I am so tired of putting time and money and energy into this show and just think, why? What was the point? Is anyone listening? If I get quiet, those people stay there. Or worse, just sort of fade out and decide podcasting could never work. That's where we end up. That's the consequences of me getting quiet. It's not that copycatting stops happening. It's not that people stop lifting what I'm doing. It's that I stop getting to be able to do what I do. And that's not okay. And so don't let the fear that this might happen, because it likely will at some point, stop you from doing the work you want to do, from saying the thing you want to say, from showing up for the people who need you to show up for them. I know the people who listen to this show, and I'm willing to bet this is you too, actually care. Actually are invested in the success that their clients find through working with them. And that can't happen if you get quiet. That can't happen if you start to hide because someone else might do something shitty. It just won't. So I want you to leave this episode with this, knowing that no matter what, it is imperative that you show up and you find ways to manage showing up, even when circumstances might make you want to hush up. Anybody watching Ted Lasso or anybody watch Ted Lasso? Even if circumstances make you want to hush your butt. It was like one of my favorite lines from that show. Hush your butt. It feels so Midwestern. And as a West Coast girl, it is not a phrase I was familiar with. Anyways, I want you to know, I get it. I've been there. Again, the annoyance is real and probably lasts longer than you'd like it to. With that said, don't let that stop you. If, as we move through this episode, you went, I need some support like this, I need somebody who can be in my corner when I feel this way, let's have a conversation, because this is a big part of what we do with our ongoing production clients is for the Hold Your Hair episodes, for the this is too scary to share, is this too transparent to share, is someone going to, like all of those things. That's part of what we help with, is managing the feels with that, managing the mindset with some of that, because we need people to lean on when we're in these places. So let's talk about what ongoing production looks like, because in addition to, a strategic show that delivers results and production support so you can stop being frustrated with the to-do list that comes with your podcast, this is a part of what we do. So head on over to uncommonlymore.com/podcast production to learn more. We are in August bringing on one, maybe two, definitely one. We'll see. Production client. And I'd love if it was you. So come and join us again, uncommonlymore.com/podcast production to learn everything and book your call so that you and I can chat to make sure we're the right fit to help you with your podcast goals. I will see you right here next week. Once again, have a great one. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Remember that content consumption does not make changes. So commit to doing something from today's episode. Maybe it's taking action on what we talked about. Maybe it's reaching out to me and learning more about podcast strategy intensives or what podcast production looks like with our team. All of that is over at uncommonlymore.com. And if you haven't yet signed up for the podcast newsroom, I want to remind you that is a great next step. If you're not really sure what comes next, hang out over there. Get those exclusive private episodes. That's over at podcastnewsroom.com. And the last favor I will ask, because social proof is endlessly important for sure, is to leave a rating or review for the show. If you go to ratethispodcast.com/more, that's the easiest way to do it. But I would love to hear what you thought of the show, what you think of the show, and if the show has been helpful for you. I can't wait to chat with you. So this is just the start of the conversation. Reach out so we can keep it going. Talk soon.